Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is probably going to be the last video that I'm making for OCD Awareness Week 2019, but this is something that I wanted to make for a little while now because a while back I did make an OCD thoughts video that got a really good response, and I still get comments on it, and it's really kind of interesting to see you know, how you guys have opened up about your own OCD thoughts and really kind of driven the message home that like any weird thought that you've had, someone else has had. So I wanted to make a kind of like part 2, I guess, just, you know, in honor of OCD Awareness Week and, you know, in honor of the fact that my brain is just like firing off nonsense at me all the time. So in case you didn't know, I do have a Patreon page. I will link that in the cards. I do, you know, some different tiers and different rewards. One of the rewards is a artist trading card that I hand paint for you guys. So if you're interested in that, that would really help me. So make sure to check that out. Let's just get started. I do want to say, first of all, if you're not really familiar with OCD and like intrusive thoughts, if you somehow just stumbled upon this video, that might be something that you want to check out first. Some background information on that stuff so you kind of know what I'm talking about. It's been said that pretty much almost everyone, I think like 98% of the population has said that they have at some point had intrusive thoughts. But like the other 2% or whatever, like, what are you doing? Do you have a brain? Is it like firing properly? Because I don't know how one would not have intrusive thoughts at some time. Like, I don't know, that doesn't seem realistic to me. Let's just get right into it. So the first one I haven't necessarily really thought about this recently, but I remember this is something that around what I consider my onset, maybe in 2013, I remember having this fear that since most of my thoughts were revolving around harm OCD, like thoughts of maybe that I was a dangerous person, that I was going to hurt myself, that I was going to hurt somebody else, I, through my like magical thinking, was afraid to wear certain colors. Like for example, I was afraid that wearing like black was somehow going to make me act out in an inappropriate way. Or like the shirts that say like, oh, what was that one? Like that Happy Bunny one. It was like cute but psycho or something, like anything that had the word like psycho or crazy or like anything like that. I thought that by wearing that, I was somehow like closer to doing something awful. In my brain, like I would see it as like a headline about like an article about how I did something really awful and I was arrested or whatever. And like in my mugshot or whatever, I had something that was like that, like a shirt that said the word like psycho or crazy or something. And like how they would like point that out in the article, how like fitting it was that I had that. So like anything that was like dark or anything that was like alternative in style, I didn't want to wear, which is interesting because that's like a large percentage of what my entire wardrobe is. So like I only wanted to wear quote happy colors. So I would wear things that were like pastel or bright or whatever because I somehow in my, like I said, magical thinking was like, oh yeah, that's somehow gonna like keep me one step further from being a sociopath. Also, kind of dealing with clothes, I have read in the past that like a symptom, like something you might want to look out for with someone that's suicidal is someone that's like giving their things away. So I every couple months will go through my closet and get rid of clothes that I, you know, don't fit my style anymore, can't, you know, just don't fit my body, or I just don't want, or whatever. I will go through and donate those clothes. And I kind of saw that as like a fear that meant that I was like giving things away, like I was closer to committing suicide. And like I still, you know, got rid of the clothes. I didn't keep anything. So that's good. I didn't avoid it on my part, but it still was like, that was in the back of my mind that I'm like, I'm giving these away because, you know, I'm getting ready to kill myself. Still here though. So if you guys have watched any of my vlogs, you might remember that I have, anytime I've been on a plane recently, I've been really like obsessed with the idea that I might go and open up the emergency exit like mid-flight. So this springs from, let me tell you like the background of what happened here. I read an article while I was on the way to the airport. I was already feeling quite anxious because this was like this past summer when I had kind of like a flare-up of my OCD. Pretty bad one actually. I needed to go to Atlanta for my friend's wedding, and I, you know, was determined. I was like, I'm still gonna go. I'm not gonna, you know, like, if I let my OCD or my anxiety like rob me of things, then it just snowballs. Then it's gonna like take more from me. If I say no to this trip, or if I, you know, don't go through with it, then it's just gonna, you know, find more ways to control me. So I was on the way to the airport, I was in the car, and I was going through, I was just reading on my phone. I came across this article that a girl had opened up the emergency exit, and like people were trying to hold her back or whatever, and she had jumped like, I think like 3,000 feet, when they were like 3,000 feet up, she had jumped like to her death. So I was like, oh my God, is it possible for me to open up the emergency exit, you know? And I started like really, you know, obsessing about that. And so for the short flight that it is from Jersey to Georgia, I was like really panicked that whole time. And then it carried over to when, you know, like a month after that, I had to fly from Jersey to China, like here, you know, where I live. I had to deal with that obsession for, you know, a good amount of the flight. Someone in the comments from one of my videos is like, physics would laugh at you for like thinking that you could just open up the door. And like, I know that, I understand that, like, when I'm in a car like that's driving, you know, at a reasonable speed, like I can't even open the door, like, you know, the pressure and all that stuff, like I can't open the door. So I don't know why I would think that I could open the door on a plane that's, you know, way more powerful. But it's also the idea of like, I might snap, I might go crazy. Like that's always like the fear, you know, that you're gonna quote go crazy. That became the fear too. I'm like, oh my God, like people are gonna have to hold me back. It's gonna be a big thing. They're gonna have to land the plane somewhere random, you know, get everybody off because like I quote went crazy. And like anytime I would get up to go to the bathroom, like sitting in the back of the plane, you know, I would go to the back bathroom and there's like an emergency exit right there. I'm like, oh my God, am I actually getting up to go to the bathroom? Or is it because I'm like, I want to open the door? So that like became a huge thing for me. All right, this one, nice, short and sweet. Right on my end table, like my nightstand there, I have a power strip. And when I'm getting ready for bed, like get into bed, take my hair down, I sometimes have bobby pins, and I'm afraid that I'm going to take the bobby pin and like take it and like boop right into the socket and electrocute myself. So one that has kind of sprung from like you guys, so thanks for that, is that like through telling my story, you know, opening up about my OCD, a lot of you guys have reached out and said that I've helped you in some way, that I've, you know, made you feel less alone, that I've just like, it's good to have someone there that understands. I've started to at some points be like, oh my God, like I'm a fraud. Kind of like imposter syndrome in a way, that I'm like, I probably don't even have OCD. Like I'm talking about this and I don't even have this. You know, like it's something else, like there's something really wrong with me. And then it's gonna come out that I like did something really horrible, and like they're gonna, you know, tell everybody about my YouTube channel about how I was doing like self-help stuff and I was really like, you know, a really awful person. So thanks for that. So yeah, that's like been a thing. It's like imposter syndrome, but coupled with like extreme anxiety. I think a big thing is like, is it really OCD? Like, do I even have OCD? Like, that's a common thought for people. So I think it's kind of like under the guise of that, it's that like I'm talking about this thing that I don't even have, you know, that like I have something else, or like I made it up or something like that. Like that's become a thing, or that I'm like, you know, pretending to have it really bad to like capitalize on it in a way. So even before what I consider to be my onset, I remember having these really vivid pictures in my brain of my pets getting run over, them like dead in the road in front of my house. Like I would always like see that. And I think I've mentioned before, like sometimes when I was in high school and like college, I remember I would leave the house with my family, and I would be really panicked about, like, if I was the last one out, I would think that maybe I didn't close the door, maybe I didn't lock the door, something with the door, like something was gonna go wrong with the door. So I would actually, like, I think I've mentioned before, I would call my friends and be like, can you go to my house and check the door, make sure that the door is closed, which now I see was a very like compulsion type thing to do. Even now, so when I don't have that thought now, obviously, because, you know, I don't have my pets here. This past summer back home, I like had that thought about, I always have that I fear, like as we're driving up to my house, like coming back from somewhere, I'm always like thinking really like, you know, extreme anxiety that we're gonna see like all of my dogs run over in the road or something in front of my house. When my OCD again was bad while I was home this past break, I had that thought also about the gate to the yard that we have, like a gated, you know, fenced in yard that we take the dogs out, let them run around, let them play and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, it'd be so easy for me to just open the gate and like let them out. Like there's nothing stopping me, you know, from opening the gate. And I was like afraid that I was going to be like compelled to do that, or that in a like lapse of reason or something, like in a just momentary, you know, state, I would just do that. Okay, the next one's kind of funny. So also I told you guys, I think that I was I've been watching Orange is the New Black. I put off watching it for a while because the whole idea of like prison and whatever is like really scary and real to me. I was afraid that by starting to watch that, and like I had known some of the premise of it, that some of it's funny, some of it's like, you know, whatever. I was afraid that I was going to be like, well, prison isn't bad. You know, it's not that bad. Like I could go there. Like I can do bad things and end up there, not be afraid, you know, of going to prison. So I have two kind of like related to like paranoia. The first one is that I mentioned actually in one of the Q&A videos that, you know, since I do live in China, I stand out a lot. So I started to worry when my anxiety is particularly bad. I'll start to think that like maybe I'm just really paranoid. Maybe people aren't actually looking at me. Like maybe people, you know, don't notice me. Maybe I'm just hearing things when I'm hearing them talk about me. In my clearer moments, I'm like, no, people are actually really, they're looking at me and talking about me. I live in a city where there are very few people that are not Chinese, so I stand out a lot, and I know that, and like my rational mind is like, no, they are really looking at you and like really curious about you. And then the second part of that is like, I'm afraid that I'm gonna become a very paranoid person, the kind of person that is like afraid that the government's out for them, because sometimes I'll just like have a thought that like, you know, I'm gonna get deported, or I'm gonna, you know, whatever, and then I start to like, the more I ruminate on that, the more I'm like, oh my God, maybe it's because I'm going to become that person. Speaking of Orange is the New Black, for those of you that watch it, in my mind I'm like, oh my God, maybe I'm like Lolly. That's a fun one. Sometimes I'm afraid that, as far as magical thinking goes, that like there is no free will, that like everything is kind of predestined. So much of recovering from OCD depends on the fact that like we have to believe in free will, like, you know, in choosing, you know, what we're gonna do or whatever, or being able to choose, you know, not being compelled to do something or anything like that. And I'm like, what if free will isn't real and it's just like everything's already written out? Like what I'm doing right now, like I didn't choose to do that, or like anything that I could do that's bad. I'm not choosing, I'm just doing it because it's already been like decided or whatever, that's what's going to happen. So also for a long time, this is another magical thinking one, I feel compelled when people sneeze, even if they're not around. Like if someone's in the other room and I hear sneezing, or like downstairs and I hear sneezing, I'll really feel strongly that if I don't say bless you, that something bad's going to happen. So when I'm home, if my mom sneezes, you know, a lot of my OCD thoughts are about my mom. I'll think that like if something bad happens to her, it's because I didn't say bless you when she sneezed. And it's like the person doesn't have to hear me. If someone sneezes really loud, you know, far away, I'll just be like, bless you, under my breath or something, because I'm afraid that if I don't say it, something bad's gonna happen. Another one is that I'll have a thought that this is all like a simulation, or somehow not real, or like my reality is not real, like that there's something, you know, like maybe I'm disabled in some way and I don't know it because people are just treating me normally, so I think that I'm normal, quote. And that's like a really scary thing, because that's another thing, like how can you be sure of that? That's just something that you want certainty for that you can't have. And then the last one I'm going to talk about, I've talked about a couple times maybe in vlogs, is that I've become like really hyper aware of my own body in certain ways. So when I'm eating things, I think that I'm suddenly gonna have an allergic reaction. Like I've never been allergic to anything that I know of, but I'm like really afraid. I'm like really conscious of my tongue swelling up, or if I feel like I'm hyperventilating, or if I feel like my throat is closing. You start to feel that way when you're panicky, so I think it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's like, oh well, you know, if I'm afraid of having a quote reaction, or something that looks like a reaction, like I'm going to have that because I'm afraid of having it, type thing. And I'm afraid that like since I'm here alone, or you know, there's no like readily available help for me, that I'm gonna die because of that. Or like choking. I'm afraid that I'm gonna choke. So for a while I was cutting up my food, especially like sausages. I was like cutting them up into really small pieces like that you would give like a child, because you know you don't want them to choke on it. I was doing that like compulsively, like making my food smaller so that it would be less likely that I would choke on it. Alright guys, so I think I've covered everything that I wanted to get to with this like segment. But if there's anything that I want to leave you guys with for OCD Awareness Week, a lot of times I talk about agreeing with the thoughts. It's not even so much about agreeing with the thoughts as it is agreeing with the uncertainty. So when you're saying, for example, take the most basic harm thought for example, what if I'm gonna hurt somebody? When you say to yourself, oh yeah, you know, that might happen, like yeah, I might hurt somebody. You know, if you're doing your ERP, if you're doing your exposure response prevention, if you're going about it the way that you have to try and manage your reactions to these thoughts, because remember, you can't control the thoughts, you can only control how you react to them. If you're doing all that properly, you know, you say to yourself like, yeah, I might hurt somebody, and in that you're not necessarily agreeing with the thought, you're more agreeing to accept the uncertainty of that thought and saying, yeah, I might do that, or yeah, it might happen. You have to say, yeah, I don't know. And you have to kind of approach it in the idea of like, yeah, well, you know, hate that I can't know for sure, but I can't, because no one really knows for sure. Try to remember that, you know, as you're going through it. I'll try and remember it as well, because a lot of times, I'll admit, I'm not the best at it, especially when I'm having, you know, a bad day or just a bad bout of a flare-up, you know? But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will link my mental health playlist for you if you're interested in seeing more. But yeah, hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you. Bye!